Hey out there, this is July 27th, Friday, here in Northern California, and it's about 8 minutes before 8 in the morning. And as usual, I'll get into a lot of different stuff. I wanted to start by mentioning a very fine human being that I knew that passed away recently. Former police chief in Orland, California, Bob Passero. He began preaching and singing in a band at a church in the little town of Orland, kind of a farming town, about 20 miles west of Chico. And I attended the church for many years. I met a woman, I knew a woman that I had worked for in Orland doing some landscaping. And that's why I began attending at her invite. And fine people. All of the entire church, it's a small church they have in the old Grange Hall, and it's being swallowed up by gentrification, development all over the place. But I tell you, I just can't say enough about this Bob Passero. The news did a piece on him, rather lengthy piece, the local news, and I wish to God I had it to re-upload to share, but unfortunately I don't have the. I'll try to remember to tape the news. They might run another piece because he was a very well-liked human being, very nice guy. I got to shake his hand, and I just felt a lot of brotherly love from this man. And I tell you, if Bob doesn't make it to heaven, nobody is. So just want to say that because when you feel such affection for a human being and then you don't have them in your presence anymore, you don't have the opportunity to see them in the flesh anymore, at least for the time being, till we get our renewed flesh. But it's tough because he was a giant among men, and he was levels above myself in my mind, at least what I know. So anyhow, it's tough. This business of life and death, and just being human is so tough. I kind of wanted that to be the focus, is just this knowledge that we are all inextricably interconnected. We do feel each other's pain through osmosis, joy and love and peace and hope. We feel all those things. We're vibrating together. We got a whole lot of crap in common. And we could be very grateful that God understands these things when we ourselves really don't. And that's why we're of marginal help to our fellow human beings. And that's why we need God. We need help from above. I know for sure I do. It's no small miracle that I'm able to continue to cope and contend with how weak and feeble and fallen I feel. Oh, God, it just, His grace is amazing. And this is how we got that term, is that people realize, believers realize that we can be very grateful that God is an all good God, and God is not responsible for anything bad. If with our puny human imaginations, we can understand all goodness, okay, no badness in God. Nothing bad has ever been his fault. He had to give us free will choice. This is the whole story behind the evil in our land. A curse befell the earth. And yeah, God was part of that curse. He had to make some compromises. I mean, that's something to take up with him. But how the evil got such power over humanity because of this knowledge of good and evil, our fallen state and the curse that befell the earth. The men earned their bread by toil and sweat and pain, and it became difficult, and women suffered in childbearing pain, and God wished he never created us. I mean, this is some gnarly stuff we got to discuss here. And help people that are agnostic or atheists, help them to understand that, God's not to blame. If he wanted automatons going on pure instinct, then he could have taken away our free will choice. But he wanted us to be in his image and likeness. He wanted us to do what we do because of love, because we choose to do it. And wild horses can't drag us away from the love of God. But other things have enticed us, tempted us, and pulled us away. Our carnal nature, and it's at enmity with the spiritual nature. And we all feel that on an individual basis. And we all feel it collectively. That we are all the same in a lot of ways. That we have a lot of the same weaknesses and temptations and enticements. And at the top of that list is the money. It's this monetary-based reality that we're thrust into from birth, so-called reality. I was down in the Bay Area visiting a daughter. Her birthday was the 25th. I'm sorry, the 24th. I think the 25th, because she was born in the evening of the 24th. And generally, I think of a new day as historically in ancient days of old, when one day ended and one started at sundown. So she was born well into the evening. And so I think of the 25th, but she was born July 24th, 1986. But that was also down in the Santa Cruz area, and I uploaded some of the footage when I was down there in that area. But one of the things that really bugged me was, the Chamber of Communists down there really got their ass hooks into the inhabitants, the residents of Santa Cruz. And it's just this whole thing with the parking is what's making me nuts. And it used to be all free parking. People say you don't get anything for free, but why can't we have free parking, okay? When we can support all the things we do, all the salaries of all these government workers, all their pension plans, and a lot of them are pretty good. And all these jobs that are created, let's create some jobs. Let's create meter maids and meter men and go out and tax people. And then they turn all the parking lots that were free into pay to park. And, they've got their rationale, but it's a rationale. It's their own. Well, yeah, I believe it because I want to believe it. It's to my benefit to believe that this is a good thing and this is progress, to go from free to having to pay for parking. And it's just glaring, and this is my hometown. It's like, I wasn't born there. I was born in North Hollywood, but I spent a large portion of my childhood and formative years in Santa Cruz. I went to first grade in Santa Cruz, second grade. I think I began my third grade when my dad decided to move the family. We were going to live in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and then we had wound up living on the Isle of Wight in England. And he bought a little boat, and we fixed it up. And I sailed all over the Mediterranean. I lived in Ireland. I lived in England. I lived in Malta. I did a lot of sailing all through the canals of France. I've been to Italy, and I've climbed Mount Etna on the island of Sicily. I've done a lot of cool stuff because my dad was super adventurous. He was quite the enigma. Anybody that knows him would confirm that. But I digress. But I had a very interesting upbringing, and so I was brought up in Santa Cruz primarily, junior high there, 6th and 7th grade, and my dad had started the first official health food store in the town of Felton in about 1969. Had it only for a couple of years. Let's see, we left there in about 1972. They'd bought a house. My parents bought a house, and my two sisters and I lived some of our formative years there, early teen and about that age. They got divorced, sold the house, and I was floundering. I missed my entire freshman year of high school. Kicking around, I couldn't decide what I was wanted to do. I was pretty pissed off about the whole situation, but I ended up on the boat with my dad, and I sailed as far as Costa Rica on that boat. But again, we weren't getting along. I was 14, 15, and a lot of hormones happening. But I still was mad at my dad. And when it got physical, when one time I wasn't moving fast enough on the boat, doing something by a dock, this 48-foot trimaran he had built in Felton. He came up on deck and he literally kicked me in the butt, and I literally lifted off the deck in front of everybody. I was utterly humiliated, and it was at that point he sent me to live with my mom, who had moved close to his sister, who was living in Norwich, Connecticut. My dad's sister, Kay. So my two sisters, I guess, got to go to they continued high school there in Norwich, but I kicked around. I worked on a farm, a dairy farm nearby, and saved a few bucks when I was 15. My mom, I guess, decided to move back to Santa Cruz. I guess my sisters and I probably pestering her, but she decided to capitulate, and I think she wanted to too. She wasn't particularly happy, I think, in the situation. We were living in a kind of a big apartment complex there. I liked it. I liked the vibe in Norwich. Back then, it was nice. We moved back, and my mom and I lived together. My sisters got kind of emancipated young. They're, I don't know, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, I guess I was about 15 at that time. So we're back in Santa Cruz, and I started high school my sophomore year, and I talked to my counselor. He assured me that, well, you get some credits for all these life experiences, and if you take these courses at Cabrillo College, a local community college, then I'll graduate you. So I did what he told me, and for all intents and purposes, I am graduated. I passed the courses, and so I've taken plenty of college. I had my real estate license too, so I know that I'm cool with the high school graduation thing. You know, I don't know why I care. It's just one of those inbred psychological things. Oh, do I have a high school diploma? I mean, you know, that's the least you got to have to comply to the system and to, you know, have any regard, any respect at all, right? You got to have a high school diploma. But I mean, take guys like Stan Meyer that invented the water car, that was assassinated for this car that could go 100 miles on a gallon of water. He was able to crack the water molecule and break it down and create hydrogen on demand. So it wasn't like you drive with a gas tank full of hydrogen, which is like a bomb. No, it was very safe because it only made enough hydrogen for what it was using. And this was done on a real just jimmy rigged case. I mean, if it was refined at all, you could see the veracity of the design and the innovation, the invention. But he was assassinated because this is a prime example of disruptive technology. But the point was that this guy, Stan Meyer, did not have a high school diploma. So you can't measure, you know, your intelligence level. I think I took an IQ test, I think somewhere around that time when I was getting reintegrated into high school at Santa Cruz High. And I probably flunked the thing. I mean, I just, it looked like gibberish to me. For the most part, I think I just winged it and guessed and probably failed miserably. I was probably classified as retarded. Challenged or some damn thing. I don't know how that worked, but they didn't give me another shot at it, so I assume that they took the initial test as valid. But anyhow, listen, I'm all over the place today, and it's just, my mind is reeling. We got fires burning around this area. The entire city of Redding, just 60 miles north from where I am, is being threatened by fire. There's a fire burning in the Whiskeytown National Forest, and I'm telling you, you talk about virgin lands. I mean, these are mountains, man, the Trinity and Shasta Hills, and Jesus Christ, all those people are all freaked out, man. The streets were jam-packed with cars. It's just ridiculous what they're going through. There might be a piece on the national news tonight about it, but man, the entire town. But apparently it was spared overnight. So I think there was a couple of dozen or more houses that were burned up. But it hasn't hit really in the urban neighborhoods. So they've been lucky that the wind hasn't getting whipped up and pointed their direction. You know, God lets these things happen, and this is part of that curse. I mean, everything bad. I mean, that's something bad that we have to face as humans. It's called a natural disaster.